film much remakes of old things with a new twist?
Maybe once a month, because we'll usually only go if there's something we want to see. We're sisters, but we have two other sisters, so usually we'll all go together. Sometimes, if we know something's coming out we want to watch, for example, it ends with us coming out tomorrow, going to see that.
Do you think your habits have changed at all over the last few years?
I'd say definitely changed because it's more expensive now, and especially like we pay for Prime and Disney and Netflix. So usually, even a few months after a movie's come out at cinema, it will then be on there, which we're already paying for anyway.
How often do you go to the cinema?
Probably once or twice a year.
What would make you go more often then, do you think?
I think if the one that was nearer to us got more screen, there was a bit more choice. Often the film we want to go and see isn't actually being shown where we live. Never.
Why never?
We do come tomorrow morning, I think.
Do you watch films at home?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah.
Just depends what else is on.
We see it come on in cinema and then we think, oh, we're going to watch that. And then we never end up going.
Yeah, we just forget about it.
Yeah, we do. We do like going to cinema, but we just don't do it anymore.
We should change our habits and get out more. Yeah. So we'll give it a go.
Literally once in a blue moon. Once in a blue moon. Why do you only go that often? Just the cost of it nowadays. It's gone that much. If it was cheaper, would you go to it? Oh yeah, definitely. You're looking at like £50 for a family, easy, with food and because they always want popcorn and everything. I think as a couple you'd be probably afford to go more with kids. It is expensive.
Well, Phil Clapp is Chief Executive of the UK Cinema Association, that's the trade association representing the interests of the UK cinema operators. And how strong is digital editor of film magazine Little White Lies. Phil, listen to that. I mean, what do you make of the news at the start of Cineworld's planned closures?
So I think it's undoubtedly true, and you said it in your words, that the industry's been through an incredibly challenging period, and it came out of COVID with great hopes and expectations, but then the cost of living crisis hit, and then the actors and writers strike. So the first few months of this year, cinemas were really struggling to find films that audiences wanted to see. And you know, while I'm loath to comment on the specifics of individual companies, what Cineworld have been very public about is the fact that, you know, the economics of running cinemas, the costs in terms of energy, the costs in terms of staff, have changed. And they were paying and agreeing commercial rents before COVID, which no longer make commercial sense for them. And, you know, going across our core membership, which is not just multiplex operators, but a broad range of small operators, all of them are finding the same challenges. But, and there's a big but, what we've seen in the last couple of months and what we'll see through the rest of the year is a turning. The films have started to come back, audiences have started to come back, why wouldn't they? And so, you know, while you're right that June this year was 3% down on June last year, July is 55% up on June because the films have come back and we're starting to get back into that regular cinema going out.
Right, we'll talk about that a bit more, but just to go back to what Cineworld was saying, they said to us, we're implementing a restructuring plan that will provide our company with a strong platform to return our business to profitability, transfer investment from the group and ensure a sustainable long-term future for Cineworld in the UK. On the other hand, Phil, you, one of the other major cinema chains, seem to be more optimistic. Why do they appear to be in a different
that people can come and see actually how many films available. We've seen actually a lot of cinemas have been programming older films and they've been doing re-releases. So I think that is big ticket summer films have slowed down considerably, but there's a lot of independent films that have still been coming out. A lot that got waivers during strikes, so we're able to continue production. And obviously going into the autumn, we've got things like Gladiator 2, which was able to pick up production very quickly. So I think there is signs that we are going to get some high-profile films towards the end of the year, but I do think it has been a struggle over the summer.
This week, the new Deadpool and Wolverine film exceeded £1 billion, pounds, at the global box office. Is this a sign that things are starting to improve?
I think it is a good sign. I would say it's a sign that everything that I think that Deadpool is trading on. The Marvel name is trading on Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman with 2 stars with incredible cachet and also it's the third film in the series. Ryan Reynolds is already established. I think this is one of the films that people who don't go to cinema will make an effort to go because they feel there is value in seeing big stunts and the big set pieces on a big screen. And also, having seen the film in packed out cinema, I know that there is a sort of lovely communal atmosphere seeing a film like this where everyone's laughing and enjoying the same jokes together. So I think that it's a good sign. I am hoping for a similar sort of response later in the year, maybe. It's going to hopefully replicate this sort of past sort of thing. It is tricky to say based on Marvel's incredible response that we're going to see that again. We can see it phenomenally well in the UK abroad. They made about $100 million,
Films we heard in across the industry. We've touched on this, but it's solved, that mismatch in a way between cost and other kinds of entertainment.
So there's probably a couple of things. One is to say that maybe I was that's not to say that, celebrities aren't absolutely aware of the pressure and some of the issues that get that. So, in 2022, ticket inflation was 2%, in 2023 was 3%. Inflation was low figure as well. But compared to since the beginning of the crisis, in order to make that sense of work, there does need to be some additional cost of living that's what
This time last year, we spent two students awaiting their A-level results. The later Jerry Gamma and India Grogan. They've now just finished their first year and join me now. Hello to you both. Thanks for coming back to us. Just to begin, let's hear again what you told Winifred last year.
Teresa, tell me then, how much is your accommodation going to be costing you if you do go to Birmingham?
So if I go to Birmingham, I will be paying £7,180. So
A year?
it is, yeah, a year.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, bearing in mind
accommodation costs. And how much?
Cover anything.
Yeah. In India, how much is it going to cost you to live in student halls in Leeds?
That's going to cost around 7,000 a
Also, what about your student loan? How much can you borrow?
month. Same amount, the minimum that we can get.
You're on the minimum because your parents have a combined income of at least £62,343 a year, which isn't an awful lot of money. That is their income between them. So I guess the next question is, will your parents be able to give you some kind of a monthly allowance, Teresa? Will your parents be able to do that?
Hopefully they can, but I was actually complaining about this to my friends because a lot of my siblings, so I've got like 8 siblings, so a lot of my siblings are dependent on one parent, and obviously with the way student finance works is that they use the last tax year to determine how much you're going to get for the next tax year, for the next academic year. And in the last tax year, my dad was working 2 jobs to make sure that all of us were being able to get around the same month and pay the rent and obviously gas, etc.
So you're doing something older than my siblings, your dad is doing your jobs, working 2 jobs. These loans don't take into account your outgoings, do you? Just your...
So even if my parents were to make, my dad was to make a lot anyway, the tax is going to come out and then there's literally nothing left. So the way student finance is that it's almost a kind of one side doesn't take all.
And how about you? Can your parents contribute?
They will to an extent, they will. Because I try to save up as much money as I possibly can with planning on getting a job as well at uni, just so that they don't have to worry about paying because they're going to within me and they can focus on it at home as it is.
So that was you too, Teresa. So Teresa, starting with you, how have you found your first year? You heard what you said. Did everything go as planned financially?
No, it didn't, unfortunately. Things do get expensive, and I realised with the money that I did have, like sometimes doing the shopping was so stressful. So a lot of the time, my mum would make food and I'll just take it back up so it would last. But definitely went home.
Were you able to get any financial help? You said you might have needed it, but did you get some help and where from?
Oh yeah, so I think I was able to get bursaries from university, and so I got a bursary from a law firm, which was really helpful.
easier for you.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Tom Allen from Save the Student. He's been listening to that. So Tom, both India and Teresa have had to ask for extra support from parents or apply for bursaries in Teresa's case and get part-time jobs. Is this the case for a lot of students?
It will be the case for definitely over half of students. I would say the majority of students. You quoted us that earlier about the extent to which the maintenance loan now falls short of living costs, and because of that, the living costs are essentially just over double what the maintenance loan is each month. So yeah, it's unfortunately not a surprise that people are having to turn to parental contributions, part-time jobs, bursaries, and whatever else source of money that they can find.
Tom, what do students do if they haven't got parental help and they can't get a job? It's not always that easy to get a job.
No, it's absolutely not. And I'd like to make that point as often as possible that people expect students to get a part-time job, and actually in a lot of cases that simply isn't possible. Where students aren't able to do that, obviously as we've heard from Teresa, bursaries and scholarships can be an option, but again, not always an option for absolutely everyone. And where they've exhausted everything else, students are kind of left with one or two options, which is the university, which every university does offer, but unfortunately there's only a limited amount there when it can't be available to students. And then sadly in some cases students are then paid for ability and left with no choice but to drop out of university.
India and Teresa. India, you go first. What help what have you learned? What's the key thing? If there's one key thing, what would it be?
Well, overall, just not everything will go to the plan that you want, but everything works for a reason. So you will find your way as you go, whether you find how to budget, you find you want to start
Okay, Teresa and India, thank you both very much indeed, and Tom as well. That's all for today. Tomorrow's Gap Finders, we'll be talking today Irene Hayes, Hayes Travel, the largest UK's independent travel agent that's been in business since 1980 with close to 500 high street outlets and still based in the North East. And we'll go where Sam will be taking a closer look.
Red light camera in 100 yards.
Universe was produced in Salford by Charlie Film Record. It's a BBC Audio North production for Radio 4. Just before 1 o'clock, weather, studio is staffed in Thanks very much, Ollie. Temperatures have come down considerably across the southern UK.
low pressure weather front expected to cross the country with weather, fresher air into the warmer areas. By Friday to into the weekend, a ridge of high pressure building in that will settle the weather right down, bringing plenty of sunshine with light winds. Now the rest of today for England and Wales, cloudy skies with spots of light rain and drizzle affecting much of the Midlands, southeast Wales, parts of southwest England and southern England. And this will only slowly begin to melt away from the west as we head through the afternoon. So many places here in the areas I mentioned staying rather cloudy. Elsewhere though, across England and Wales, there's plenty of sunshine today with light winds. Scotland and Northern Ireland will see a little patchy cloud with the odd shower for parts of Northern Ireland, particularly towards the west, Argyll and the Highlands. Otherwise, there's plenty of sunshine across the north of the UK with light winds. So temperatures today range from 15 to 20 degrees across the northern half of the country, 20 to 25 across the south. Tonight though, wet and windy weather will start to spread in off the Atlantic into Scotland, Northern Ireland and then into northwest England and northwest Wales. So quite a wet windy night to come here. The rest of England and Wales though will be dry with clear spells, very well cloudy, will be milder in the north. We have the cleanest tomorrow with breezy conditions push across England and Wales, with sunshine and blustery showers following, temperatures of 17 to 24 Celsius.
Thanks, Steph. Look ahead to next week.
Came round a corner, and it was a shock.
On June 14th, 2017, a fire engulfed Grenfell Tower.
At that point,
Average speed camera zone. Speed limit is 50 miles per hour.
It claimed the lives of 72 residents, but was it preventable? I'm Kate Lowry, and in a new series I'll explore what created the conditions for a tragedy which could have been avoided.
This goes to the basis of the whole thing.
Grenfell building a disaster, next Monday to Friday at 1:45 on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. On 92
Average
to
speed
92,
camera zone.
25, 95
Speed limit
FM on
is
BBC
50 miles
Sounds and
per
on your
hour.
smart speaker. This is Radio 4.
Hello and welcome to the World at One with me, Johnny Diamond. The Scottish Government says only essential public spending can go ahead as its finances hit the buffers.
I mean, this is yet another sign of the chaotic incompetence of the Scottish Government and their handling of public finances in Scotland.
Scottish Labour tells us what it would have done differently to the SNP government. Another Russian region next to Ukraine declares a state of emergency. How damaging is Ukraine's incursion for President Putin? We'll ask the former Russian Prime Minister.
For Mr. Putin, that is absolute surprise. That is a serious psychological blow for him. And it appeared to be again that all militaries are not prepared to defend territory of Russia.
Also on the World at One, a Walsall canal is poisoned with cyanide. We'll hear from the scene. And
doing the garden thing.
dispute with train drivers. Members of ASLEF have been meeting officials at the Department for Transport for the second time since Labour won the election in July. The union's boss, Mick Wheeler, said the talks have been temporarily adjourned and there was no
Average speed camera zone. Speed limit is 50 miles per hour.
for the first time this year, hitting 2.2% in July from 2%. The increase was smaller than expected, and with other underlying measures of price pressures falling, some economists foresee a further interest rate cut by Bank of England as soon as next month. Our economics editor,
Speed camera in 300 yards. Speed limit is 30 miles per hour.
Will not be the last this year, but this was a relatively modest bump in the rate of price increases, and crucially, more enduring measures of inflationary pressures in the service sector, for example, are starting to normalise. A further Bank of England cut next month is now a possibility. The two-year inflationary shock to food and energy prices is nearly over, but its impact on household remains, with the Institute for Fiscal Studies publishing new research showing that over the past 2 years, food prices had surged by nearly a third, like more for the cheapest foods, affecting those with the lowest incomes. The Treasury said it was under no illusion about the challenges facing households. The opposition said more needed to be done to keep inflation down.
Ukraine's armed forces say they've shot down one of Russia's most expensive new fighter jets as their incursion into the country enters its second week. The Su-34 is believed to cost £30 million. Kiev claims it's still advancing and says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. The governor of the Belgorod region has accused Ukraine of destroying homes and killing civilians. Correspondent James Waterhouse reports from neighbouring Sudan.
The skies over the Kursk region became clearer with the words of Ukraine's head of the armed forces, Alexander Syrskyi, in an online post where he announced the downing of the prized Russian fighter bomber. Moscow has yet to confirm it. General Syrskyi claims his troops are still advancing and now control more than 70 Russian settlements. In the country's Kursk region, there is now a new front line thought to be more than 40 kilometres long. It's causing more local officials to declare states of emergency and announce mass evacuations, although those will partly be attempts to secure central funding and resources from Moscow. While it's hoped by some this incursion will improve Ukraine's position for any future peace talks, Kyiv now says any prospect of negotiations are on a long pause.
German media has reported that a European arrest warrant had been issued for a Ukrainian man who was allegedly part of a team that blew up the Nord Stream gas pipelines. The infrastructure carried Russian gas to Germany under the Baltic Sea and was a controversial symbol of the country's dependence on Moscow for energy. Our correspondent Damien McGuinness reports from Berlin.
It's almost 2 years since the Nord Stream gas pipelines were blown up. Now, according to German media, investigators in Germany believe they know who planted the explosive devices. He's been identified as Vladimir Elkin. Reports. German officials would not confirm the reports to the BBC, but a spokesperson for the Polish Prosecutor General did tell the BBC that Germany had issued a European arrest warrant for the man, but that when Polish officers went to his house in Warsaw, he wasn't there and that he had left the country for Ukraine.
Public health bosses say they hope to begin removing restrictions soon on a stretch of canals in the West Midlands where there's been toxic spillage. A major incident was declared in Walsall yesterday. Officials have identified the chemical as sodium cyanide, but it still isn't clear how it entered the Walsall. Joe Black reports from the scene.
On the canal in Walsall, dead fish can be seen floating on the surface. Police tape cordons off the entrance to the towpath, and people along a 12-mile stretch from Walsall to Birmingham, including Wednesbury, Tipton and West Bromwich, have been urged to stay away. Men and women wearing high visibility jackets can be seen walking round, one carrying a long pole and metal beaker attached. Walsall Council has confirmed the substance that leaked as sodium cyanide. It's used in industry for things like metal cleaning, plating and photography. The chemical dissolves in water and can be a risk to people and pets if they're exposed to it, causing seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. The source of the leak is being investigated and restrictions should be reduced once the authorities believe they have control of the situation.
That report from Joe Black.
Thanks, Tom. In Scotland, the sound of screeching brakes. The Finance Minister, Shona Robertson, has told Scottish Cabinet Minister destruction comes as the Scottish Government grapples with the gap between income and expenditure created in part by the pay deals it's been striking with public sector workers, and it says because of uncertainty over the settlement to come from the Westminster Government. Legally mandated spending will continue, but universal winter fuel payments for pensioners have been scrapped, and spending on things like free school meals and scrapping peak rail fares is now in doubt. Rachel Amory is political correspondent for The Scotsman. She joins us. Good afternoon, Rachel.
Good afternoon.
Is this because the numbers don't add up, there is a hidden already, or because the government fears the numbers will not add up in the coming months?
300 yards.
A bit of both, perhaps. If we go back to when we set the budget for the 2024-2025 back in December last year, even then the ministers in Scotland were trying to say there is no cash left, we're really stretching our hands here, we're going to have to pull things right back. So this warning has been around for quite a while. But as you said today, there's new figures released which show that the deficit in Scotland has now risen to £22.7 billion. That's about 10.4% of GDP at the moment. So I think a bit of both. I mean, we sort of have seen cuts happening so far, and I think there are now concerns that it's going to rise even further because this is quite a big gap, as you can see in the finances.
And are we able to tell how much of this is because of what you might call excess spending in Scotland, and how much is because of concern about any reduced settlement from Westminster flowing from Rachel Reeves and the review she's making of public finances?
Well, that's of course what the SNP government are going to argue at this point, that they are concerned that they don't know how much money is going to come from Rachel Reeves's settlement. However, it's saying here that 10.4% of GDP is the deficit in Scotland, but the UK as a whole is only 4.5%. So there is a gap there between what's happening in Scotland and what is happening across the whole of the UK. One thing that has happened today, which is quite interesting, is winter fuel payments. This was something that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, announced was going to be means tested now, was trying to save some money in the public finances. That policy is being devolved to Scotland this year, and at the time when this announcement was made, the Public Finance Minister in Scotland said that it would potentially need £100 million to try and fund it to be universal in Scotland. And of course today we've now had this announcement that it's not going to happen because of these financial pressures.
And this is, I mean, presumably politically, it's a terrible blow for the Scottish National Party.
Absolutely, and the Scotland office, run of course now by the new Labour government, are saying that this shows that Scotland is better off in the Union, for example, saying that I think it's about almost £2,500 per head better off, they're saying, because of the figures released today. So of course it will be a blow to the Scottish Government. They are probably likely to try and push the blame as much as they can onto Westminster and onto this new Labour government and the previous Conservative government. And we're already seeing that. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes, for example, today already sort of blaming Westminster and blaming the Labour government for the actions that have been taken now.
Rachel, thank you so much for your Rachel Amory from The Scotsman newspaper. The SNP-led Scottish Government declined to Labour member of the Scottish Parliament and shadow cabinet secretary for finance at that Parliament. I asked him for his reaction to the finance minister's letter.
Well, I mean, this is yet another sign of the chaotic incompetence of the Scottish Government in the handling of public finances in Scotland. This letter is revealed on the very same day that Scotland's public finances are shown that they have £2,417 per head additional spending in comparison to the rest of the UK in Scotland. And the people of Scotland are asking, I think rightly so, why we're not seeing better outcomes for that money.
Outcomes are one thing. The difference between what comes in and what goes out is another, and it is that which appears to have prompted this letter. What is it that Labour would have done differently which might have precluded this emergency halt on spending?
Well, I think across there's the spending situation that the Scottish Government themselves, and this is a government that didn't actually provide a public pay policy to the Scottish Fiscal Commission, which is one of the documents that they are meant to provide in order for the Scottish Fiscal Commission to produce the budget recommendations towards the Scottish Government. They've completely neglected their duties in terms of what they have to do to keep control of public spending and to make sure that this money can be properly allocated to needs the Scottish people.
When you look across the pay deals that have been struck by the Scottish Government, which are the ones that Labour would not have struck? Where would you have offered less money?
it's very difficult to say. What we see is one pay deal that's been struck in recent days regarding the threatened bin strike in Scotland. But we're being told that these are for potential future pay deals. So the absence of public pay policy that the SNP have failed to produce now for 2 years in a row is a key failure on behalf of the Scottish Government. So they don't have a policy, they don't have the discipline of actually engaging with the workforce, talking to them about what is required, looking at the fiscal situation and allocating money appropriately. Then, it's that level of incompetence that leads us to the situation that we're in at the moment. So it's very difficult to answer that.
You know the question to be asked. Would you have done the deal to pay for the bin strike to be cancelled?
Well, we have to make sure that we can put the money in people's pockets to make sure that the services continue to run. What I would say is that I would have taken as Finance Secretary a considered view of the public finances in Scotland. I would have had a proper pay policy in place for the long term, and I would have considered that and spoken to the trade unions about what we had in place.
The other piece that appears to be a concern for the Scottish Government is yes, expenditure is part of it, and these pay deals appear to be part of it. There's also doubt over the money that's going to come or is expected to come from Westminster, from central government, and this is because of Rachel Reeves's review of public spending, which has thrown, so the Scottish Government seems to say, its own plans into disarray, that the prospect that it may not receive the money that it thought it was going to get.
Well, Rachel Reeves has received probably the worst economic inheritance of any Chancellor since the Second World War, and we have found that £22 billion in-year black hole in public spending plans that's had to be filled. We have to find some way of filling that, and Rachel Reeves is working towards making that happen. That's an incredibly challenging situation. But the Scottish Government have been in this situation for years now, where they've known of a significant gap between the promises that they have made and actually the money that they have got coming in. The Scottish Government do not seem to be able to get a grip of it.
The lack of new licensing for oil and gas projects will only compound the pain for Scotland and its finances. That is a Labour policy. Will you look at that again?
Well, we need to make sure that there is a proper transition between the oil and gas extraction and the development of new renewables. We saw significant announcements on that yesterday in terms of the future of our renewables economy in Scotland and what that can do to generate jobs and revenues for the Scottish economy. We want to make sure that that's a governed transition. We'll continue to do that in partnership with the industry to make sure that we can have an oil and gas industry that exists for decades to come.
That was Labour MSP Michael Mara, the Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Finance in the Scottish Parliament. Do get in touch with us on social media. Use the hashtag BBCWATO. Our email address is worldatone@bbc.co.uk. Ukraine says it is still moving forward into Russian territory. The Kremlin says it has halted Ukraine's advance in Belgorod, alongside Kursk, one of the two Russian regions now playing host to Ukraine's military. The governor has declared a state of emergency. Ukraine's military action inside Russia appears to have prompted a political reaction. Speaking in Moscow, the Russian Foreign Ministry's special envoy, Rodion Miroshnik, accused Kiev of derailing possible negotiations and ruled out talks with the current leadership in Kiev. Mr. Miroshnik said it was precisely through terrorist actions in the Kursk direction that Ukraine at least put the track related to peace negotiations on a long-term pause. In my opinion, he went on, this was done absolutely deliberately because conducting negotiations with an absolutely inadequate adversary today is simply unnatural. But Sir Alex Younger, who used to run MI6, suggested on the Today programme that Ukraine's offensive may actually push Russia closer to peace talks.
It's going to get more political. We're heading towards some kind of conversation, and Zelensky's big problem is he's got to reset the politics of this to his advantage. He's got to get back the initiative. He's got to impose cost and uncertainty on Russia, and he's got to do that from relative weakness.
Mikhail Kastyanov served as Russian Prime Minister for 4 years from 2000, but now leads the opposition party People's Freedom from Latvia. I asked him how bad the situation is for President Putin.
It again, as it were, happened a year ago, it's an absolute shock. A serious psychological blow for him. and it's appeared to be again that our military is not prepared to defend territory of Russia.
Presumably talking about the Persian mutiny and the march on Moscow. Mr. Putin appeared to rebound from that pretty successfully.
Yes, he right now, of course, qualified dictator, I would put it this way. He managed to overcome this problem, although I thought it would be much more negative effect and consequences for him. He was quite professionally as dictator, just with the great experience, long experience, overcame that. Today, it's some kind of repeat, but it is already a regular Ukrainian army doing this.
Given President Putin's very tight control of the media in Russia, there must be only a limited risk of the population turning against him or changing its mind about the war in Ukraine as a result of this incursion. He can control what they learn and he can manipulate what is going on.
Agree. You explained this absolutely correctly. Unfortunately, the situation is such that Putin controls all media and all, I would say, information appear to be just in the public, and that's why just they're so angry that some governors started to complaining just that we have to move just a lot of people from one region to another, etc., because just still. Last moment, Putin didn't say that it was invasion, it was offensive operation. He said something happened, just we should take it under control. But these days, we already know that a lot of troops from different regions of Russia going there, to Kursk region and Belgorod region. Moreover, we see that the militaries, not only militaries, but also inviting civilian workers. They started digging trenches near Kursk. Syria. That is already started preparation for defense of the territory, but before it never happened because Putin believed that Ukrainians believe that it's untouchable territory, that's not the war.
What is your expectation of Mr. Putin's response?
He will try to create something very tough, like bombing one or another city or something painful for Ukrainians, so that he would like to achieve Ukraine. So Ukrainian government and Ukrainian people would understand that it's not possible for them to touch actual Russia, recognized territory of Russia, because just for him it is a real blow inside Russia. If information goes further on and Ukrainians will continue to keep territory for a long period of time, and if it happens that it will be part of negotiations for exchange of territories, that for him a real psychological and political problem, and he has to somehow to deal with this.
We know that the Ukrainian forces have been using German and American weaponry and armor as part of their offensive in Kursk and Belgorod. All the time throughout this war, Ukraine has been begging to be able to use its weapons against Russia, not just in defense, but also in some form of offense. Does this prove to you that it is the right thing to do for the West to supply arms and to let Ukraine use them as they want?
I think that is absolutely clear that no, just those invisible red lines, just they don't exist, and that's what I would say the cautious attitude to Mr. Putin, that trying to create a formula, do not humiliate Mr. Putin, he will react something just strong, etc. That is already, that feeling disappeared. I think just right now that's absolutely clear that there is a standard war, and Ukraine can use all what it's possible to defend themselves. And that is, I think, just clear already for politicians in Germany and France and Great Britain. And that's why just absolutely clear that for me it's clear that Mr. Putin, of course, angry on that, but he will not take this as a punishment of those countries for the supplies, because it's he already, to a great extent already, his ability to react is already reduced dramatically, and politically and physically on the battlefield.
That was Mikhail Kastyanov, former Russian Prime Minister. Steve Rosenberg is our Russia editor. He's on the line for us from Moscow. Russia, Steve, forgive me. I spoke with Mr. Kastyanov of the control of the media, the very tight control of the media that the Russian authorities, that Vladimir
Putin has. What is the story that Russians are hearing about what is going on the border with Ukraine?
Well, the Russian state media is not covering this up. It's not really sugarcoating it. It's reporting a lot about what is happening, but it's talking about the situation on the border. It's talking about a provocation by Ukraine. It's talking about a terrorist attack by Ukraine. The word invasion is used sometimes, but not very much, and I think that sends a message to the Russian public that, okay, the situation is serious, but that it is controllable and containable.
If it is being presented like that, is there a comparison, as Mr. Kasyanov drew, with the Prigozhin Q attempt, the march on Moscow led by the former leader of the Wagner mercenary group last year?
To an extent, yes, but of course the big difference here, right? The Wagner mutiny lasted 24 hours and was over. We're now into day 9 of the Ukrainian incursion, day 9 of Ukraine fighting on Russian soil and seizing Russian territory. And this is what makes it, I think, so potentially damaging to Vladimir Putin. I say potentially because there have been so many potential watershed moments, haven't there, over the last 2.5 years? Moments when many people have thought, this would damage Putin, like the sinking of the Moskva warship, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, like the fact that Putin was forced into declaring partial mobilization, which sparked deep alarm across through Russian society, and like last year when we had the Prigozhin mutiny. Putin got through all of that, and I think he'll be confident he can overcome this latest challenge, but he will be keen, and that is an understatement, to end this as soon as possible. Otherwise, it risks damaging the image which he has created around himself over the last 25 years as Mr. Security, as the only man in this vast country who is capable of keeping Russians safe and secure. And the whole idea of this so-called special military operation, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, was to boost Russia's national security. Well, 2.5 years on, that's not looking very successful, is it? There's more NATO on Russia's borders, Finland and Sweden having joined. There are almost daily drone attacks on a string of Russian towns. And now we see Ukrainian soldiers in southern Russia seizing territory.
Steve, always good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Steve Rosenberg, our Russia editor. What is a British summer without jousting? Our season on British festivals takes us today to Pendennis Castle in Cornwall, where 4 knights, or at least people pretending to be knights, will compete in grand medieval jousts. It's happening this week, and our guide is Lucy O'Connor, Assistant Events Manager at English Heritage.
We have been hosting one of the legendary jousts at Pendennis Castle. This joust involves 4 legendary knights, so each knight represents a character from myth or legend, which includes Jason of the Argonauts, Sir Lancelot of the Lake, the Wyvern and the Wild Man. Obviously, jousts historically were quite dangerous sports. They were known to be fatal in some cases. Of course, we want to make sure that we look after our performers and our horses that are involved in the joust, but we try to be as historically accurate as we can be in terms of how we recreate that sport. And so within the jousts that we do, they aren't scripted and no one knows who is actually going to win, so you still get that sense of excitement watching something that would have historically been quite dangerous.
They come, here they come!
You can also watch them in a fantastic display of skill at arms. So they do several different skills on horseback, including trying to get their lance through a small hoop, which is trying to help them test their aim within the joust. And then, of course, it all culminates in the really dramatic joust at the end of the day, and you can really hear the drama, really. So you hear the thunder of hooves, you hear a fantastic score of medieval music, which is made by our fantastic musicians, Calaman's Dream, which just really stirs kind of your excitement. And then you hear the actual clash of them meeting their lances on each other's armour, and seeing the lances shatter is really a dramatic, exciting to see.
Here we come, closing at speed. Yes, both of them striking.
Alongside that, we also have falconry displays, which are in and of themselves beautiful displays of artistry, as well as opportunities to actually meet the knights themselves and hear stories of the legends that inspired the characters. So we've got amazing performers called Heathcliff Heroics who retell the stories that inspire these characters. So then you get to see the knights in action and choose who you want to support them yourselves and then cheer them on. It's just a fantastic way of seeing how history can be brought to life and to really understand what it meant to be a supporter at a medieval joust, really. And it's just a fantastic way for people to kind of see a different interpretation of the castle, which really brings it to life for me.
Lucy O'Connor there, our guide to Jousting Festivals series continues. Growth is the mantra of the new government in Westminster, but with books to balance, cuts are also coming thick and fast to sectors of the economy that some think are critical to enabling growth. £1.3 billion previously promised for AI and technology research was yanked by the Treasury. An exascale supercomputer at university. There are reports that the Ministry of Defence has been told to cut its science and technology and research and development budgets. One project possibly facing the axe, or at least the scalpel, is the Minerva satellite programme launched when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, with a network of new satellites commissioned to support military operations. I spoke to Sir Martin Sweeting, founder and executive chairman of Surrey Satellite Technology, which won the first two contracts for the project.
We went through a procurement exercise a year or so ago when we were selected for the project, but then the decision on actually signing off and kicking off the project has been delayed, and this is what's causing us some concern. What are your key concerns? Well, the key concern really is that we will lose momentum. If we're just going to launch the first satellite for MOD, if we delay that project or even worse, cancel it, we will lose the momentum or the experience and capability that we built up over the first project, not just here at SSTL, but also in the UK supply chain. And once you lose that, it then takes a much longer time to rebuild it later on if you decide to restart it.
And this is a high-tech project with highly skilled workers as well. It is presumably the kind of thing which, when you think about the growth that you want in the future, you want to encourage.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just inside the UK. This capability will provide us the opportunity to export to allies around the world. And so it's not just for the UK MOD capability, which is clearly important, and maintaining that into the future, but also putting it into the sport. Satellites are primarily, let's call it, Earth observation. So they are gathering intelligence information through using optical cameras and radio receivers, and this provides UK MOD with a degree of independent capability to observe what's going on around the world and make its own decisions. Of course, we have very close links with our allies, particularly the US, but sometimes our priorities don't necessarily always coincide. And so having a degree of independence of visibility and independence of action is really important to the UK.
It's worth saying, isn't it, that nothing's been cancelled yet, but your concern is that delays are now getting baked in.
Well, the new government clearly has a lot of financial challenges. The key here is that the project has not yet been cancelled. It has been awarded, if you like, but not secured. And what we don't want to happen is that in the process of looking at the savings, that this becomes under that scrutiny and gets cut, because then we would lose the advantages that we built up.
Though, as you say, something has to give if the books are to be balanced. You understand that there are different priorities now, and the government is looking around to claw back cash wherever it can. What is the argument that you would make to say, not this project?
In this particular area, I believe that having a independent sort of eye in the sky to be able to give us better information will allow MOD to perhaps make more effective decisions. Also, this is a relatively small budget in terms of MOD, and so consequently, I think in terms of looking at the cuts, this is something which I believe punches above its weight in terms of economic capability in return.
And the point has been made by some that cutting science and technology research and development budgets is, in the medium term, sort of foot shooting exercise, because these are the industries of the future. These are the industries that will enable further growth for the UK.
Absolutely, and in fact, space fundamentally underpins our entire society and economic environment. And so, cutting technology investment in the short term saves a bit of money, but in the long term, it hits our international competitiveness, and also it means that we don't have the strength in an area which is fundamentally underpinning our entire society and economy.
That was Sir Martin Sweeting, the Executive Chairman of Surrey Satellite Technology. We contacted the Ministry of Defence. A spokesperson told us, "We remain committed to the development of satellite-based intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities. The government will secure Britain's defences for the future while increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP as soon as possible." Dead fish have been seen floating in a canal in the West Midlands, the result of a spill of sodium cyanide into the water in the Pleck area of Walsall. A major incident has been declared amidst urgent testing of the water. The spill has spread from Pleck as far as West Bromwich and Birmingham. People are being warned to stay away from the water. The BBC's Joe Black is in Walsall for us. Joe, is it clear yet what happened?
Not yet, but an investigation is ongoing, and I'm in Walsall at the moment on a bridge overlooking the canal, and as you say, a major incident has been declared, and everywhere I look there are police officers and men and women in high visibility jackets walking around, going along the towpath. One man was carrying something that looked like a cool bag that you'd put sandwiches in on a sunny day. Another gentleman had a very long pole with a metal beaker on the end of it, so we can only assume those sorts of things are being used to take water samples. And as you were just mentioning there, on the bridge where I'm standing, I can look into the water and I can see approximately 50 dead fish. And wildlife experts say this spillage could be devastating. And the spill was identified on Monday. As they say, there's an investigation taking place. Walsall Council leader Gary Perry has confirmed the substance is sodium cyanide, which we understand can cause seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. But it's too early to say how it's entered the water.
Are there people around? Are there members of the public still around?
There's not many members of the public where I'm standing. I have seen a few this morning come along and take a look. But as you were also outlining there, people have been told to avoid that 12-mile stretch of the canal network and the towpaths running alongside. So that's from Walsall, where I am at the moment, to Birmingham, but it also takes in Wednesbury, Tipton and West Bromwich. So as you know, canals are busy places. You see canal boats and people running or taking a stroll or walking their pets along the towpath, but it is very quiet here at the moment.
And Joe, is it too early to be talking about a clean-up? Do we know if it can be cleaned up?
I think it is too early to say at the moment. Of course, we would look to the authorities for that sort of answer, but they say they are working as cautiously but as quickly as they can, and they say the restrictions should be reduced once they've got a grip of the situation.
Joe, thank you so much. Joe Black, our correspondent there by the canal in Walsall. It used to be the young who were told to find something to do with their lives. After all, older people had already done lots. But a joint Chinese and Swedish study into dementia suggests that purpose and personal growth may be important in staving off mild cognitive impairment or dementia. To chart a route to a happier old age, I'm joined by Joan Bakewell, the Labour peer and legendary broadcaster, Giles Brandreth, former MP, also legendary broadcaster, and author, of course, of The 7 Secrets of Happiness. Welcome to you both. Joan, let me start with you. In working lives, people quite often have ambition, career ambition as a purpose. That presumably sort of rather goes away once you stop working. What do you have instead?
You have a project, you have an objective, you have something to do. It might be learning to do watercolours. Don't start on oils, they take too long. But a watercolour can be done in a few hours. Make scones and not fruitcake. Do things that are achievable within a short time because you don't know how much time you've got left.
Very honest with us there. Giles, you never seem to lack purpose. Was there a period, I don't know, for example, when you left the Commons or something like that, where you suddenly thought, what do I do now? And if there was, did you work out, how did you work out what to do?
There certainly was. I felt rejected by the people. I had been rejected by the people. I lacked purpose. But then I discovered a wonderful psychiatrist called Anthony Clare, and it was he who led me to those 7 Secrets of Happiness, one of which is to cultivate a passion. And I often think of the late Queen, aged 96, still with purpose, of course, because she had her duties, but also with the passion for her dogs and her horses. And that is what kept her going. You need a passion in life. Somebody like Margaret Thatcher, her only passion really was politics. And when that passion was taken away from her, she was the same generation as Elizabeth II, all the same time, back in 1926. She didn't have anything to fall back on. So you need something to fall back on. We were talking about canals a moment ago. With the great Dame Sheila Hancock, I went on canal journeys when she was 90 to 91 years of age. And that's what keeps you going, having a purpose in life. You very rarely